Hey, welcome, and you're sitting down with us. We are going to have a candid conversation about what COVID has brought to us in 2020. And I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine. His name is Ryan. And hey, Ryan, how we doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Hey, so I brought you in because I really wanted to have a conversation about what COVID and these lockdowns and all this stuff has really been doing for our young people. But I know that it's affected so many more. But before we really jump into this, tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and you also have a lot of kids. So just tell the people like, why are we listening to you? You know, of
Okay.
all people.
Well, some people think I have a lot of kids. I have less than some, more than others. But yeah, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I've been practicing in the Tri Cities for about 8 years, a little bit over 8 years now. And I love what I do and the journey that life brought me on to bring me here to Tri Cities and even to be a mental health counselor. I feel very, very fortunate that I get to do something every day that I engage with and that energizes me as much as it does. So, mental health is something I'm passionate about based on my convictions and my personal experience. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I run the program that we have here at C3. It's a free mental health program for not just for C3 members, but the community.
Kind of the backbone to our what we do for counseling.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I appreciate. Thank you.
yeah.
Because it's brought a lot of help and stability to I think a lot of people here, at least at C3.
Yeah, knowing that is a blessing. That's what I hope it would be.
Yeah.
So I do that, and in addition, I co-own a private practice outside of here, the Canyon Lakes Family Counseling Center. We have 10 counselors over there that work in
Wow.
our group practice, as well as a massage therapist that we're excited about.
Wow. Nice. And you guys have been busy during this season.
Yeah, very busy. Um, Unique, I guess, to most areas of the country, Tri Cities already was an underserved area for mental health
Interesting.
prior to COVID, and so we've always been busy. Now we're at max capacity and beyond.
Wow.
All of the counselors are, in my practice, and the ones that I know are completely full and overbooked, and
Yeah.
people are really struggling to find resources.
Right. So, we'll jump right into this, but I wonder, getting us going, I wonder what you feel like has been some of the causes that has caused the heightened need for counseling in this area of
Mhm.
depression, anxiety, mental illness type stuff.
Sure. Anytime there's a huge adjustment, adjustments naturally produce anxiety.
Right.
Anxiety is kind of like our brain's warning signal for a threat or perceived threat. And so anytime something changes, especially significant changes, it's going to increase anxiety. Not always Anxiety is not always bad. Sometimes that increase in anxiety can help prepare us for that change, help us cope with it, give us a warning that we need to change something. Um, but also beyond that, we are, and as Scripture says, Scripture talks about connection and relationship and fellowship,
Right.
and so we're social creatures, and increased isolation will inevitably impact mood.
Interesting.
I think we quite often take for granted just the nuanced interactions we have with people every day, just in passing, and how that
Yeah.
shifts our mood for the better.
Yeah.
And so people having less interactions will inevitably have a drop in mood.
Okay. Okay. So kids not being in school, parents not getting to be around their peers like at work. You're saying all those factor in to a heightened sense of need or something happening in our bodies that cause us to kind of set up alarm signals and things.
Yes, yeah. So I think if we were going to truly analyze the complexity of influence, I think it's immeasurable.
Yeah.
But we can identify specific things, like parents who are now struggling economically will be stressed, and maybe
Sure.
potentially then less available emotionally to their kids. And so kids will pick up on that stress. If the family doesn't know how to deal with that openly and work through it, and the child doesn't see resolution to that stress, then that child's more likely to feel maybe like hopeless or helpless. There's nothing I can do, and mom and dad are always upset. So loss of jobs, economic impact, change of routine, and just in general, being out of school, less physical activity, shifts in relationships.
Yeah.
And then even deaths of loved ones, hearing about deaths, all of that and more will significantly impact how somebody feels about themselves and their world.
Yeah, because even like Thanksgiving, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people experienced a change of pace of what you would normally experience around a time when you're supposed to get together with a lot of people and be very thankful, right?
Yep.
So changes everything.
Right. So, missing people.
Yeah.
You know, when we love people and then we don't see them, we miss them.
Right.
And so not being able to keep up with, a tradition hundreds of years old,
right,
that we've done every year in a certain way, and now it's different.
Right.
Even if I can acknowledge that shift and be aware that it's different and it's okay that it's different, I will still feel a fluctuation in my mood.
Right. So what are some, I've heard a lot of staggering statistics, right, thrown out there. But what are some that have really stood out to you? And I know you've taken some notes, and that's good. It's good that we have some notes here. But what are some that were really alarming for you to hear?
Among many, it's the increase in young children and adults even thinking about suicide.
Oh, yeah.
For example, in the U.S., about 2 years ago, it was estimated about 4% of adults had thought about suicide over the last year, and this year it's over 10%.
Oh, wow.
And so if you think about that, 1 in 10 adults are thinking about suicide when it used to be less than 4%.
Huh.
And then, we know, for example, like children, so some of the statistics that reported by the CDC, between April and October of this year, a portion of emergency visits related to mental health for children ages 5 to 11 increased 24%, and it increased 31% for children 12 to 17.
Wow.
Compared to a year ago.
What does that look like an emergency mental illness call?
Well, it could look like a lot of different things. But children who are struggling with being a threat to themselves and or others.
Okay.
So suicide threats or attempts would be one of the reasons why an emergency mental health visit would happen. And to think that they've gone up 25 to 31%, that's a lot. That's a huge increase.
Yeah.
And it's alarming.
And the personnel that it takes to meet that need, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you think about like a nationwide system, a 30% increase across the whole nation. That's a huge increase in need in what already was a strained system.
Yeah. What's another? I know you had a couple that you shared with me earlier.
So 7 in 10 young adults, 18 to 23, reported to have experienced symptoms of depression in this last year.
And depression is it seems so complex.
It is.
I mean, it's so huge. You can't even. Sometimes it feels like it's so hard to wrap your arms around. Yeah. What are some practical ways that you figure out if someone is depressed? How would I notice, either in myself or in you or someone I love, that there's hints of this taking hold of their life?
Yeah. So the DSM that we use to diagnose mental health conditions It outlines 9 criteria.
DSM.
The DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's the manual that all mental health medical professionals use to diagnose mental health disorders. So it outlines 9 criteria that professionals use to assess if somebody is depressed, or if they may, if they're dealing with depression, or the level of depression that they might be dealing with.
Okay.
So some of those symptoms include things like feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, shifts in appetite, shifts in sleep patterns, feelings of guilt, like feeling like you're a failure, or have let yourself or your family down.
And I just want to pause just real
Sure.
quick, because I think about students, especially in the church.
Yeah.
That a lot of, when you start to go to church and you call yourself a Christ follower, sometimes you feel like you have to be perfect, right? And so this sense of perfection sometimes causes people, if they are not achieving what they consider perfection, then they become depressed in the sense that they are letting someone else down, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually could be a symptom of depression, and feelings like you're letting yourself or your family down. It's not, if somebody feels that way, it doesn't mean they have depression, because you do have to have 5 or more criteria to actually qualify for the diagnosis.
Okay.
But yeah, cultural expectations. If someone believes that because they're Christian they should always be happy,
right?
Then
right.
Maybe they need to read that Jesus wept too.
Right.
And
good.
there are entire books and Psalms about lamenting.
Right.
And
King David was probably a depressed man.
Sure.
he probably experienced that, because he wrote a lot about lamenting and being sad and down and
right.
Yeah.
Right. The joy, sadness, the Bible is very clear that it happens.
Yeah.
And
so it's not odd. It's not, if you're feeling depressed, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. It's a feeling that people have, right?
Yeah. Feeling down happens, right? And even then, I think if we never experienced downswings in our mood, then we would never need God, and we would never need other people, and we wouldn't need each other, and we'd be self-sufficient and independent.
Right.
We wouldn't need each other.
Yeah. And
so, going through experiences where our mood goes down actually becomes an opportunity to connect, and it shows our need for other people, and even opportunities to develop things like humility.
Yeah.
I can't do it all on my own. I need help.
Yeah. So what are some other markers that we should be looking for?
So back to the criteria, there's other things like, thoughts you'd be better off dead or harming yourself in some way. And we always do on the clinical side, we always look for impairment in function. So we might look for things like, the mood, or the down mood, feeling down, depressed, or hopeless, is impacting somebody's relationships or work, inability to work or work properly. One of the other criteria is like concentration. So if somebody's depressed, they might really be struggling with concentration. A student would then potentially have a harder time completing tasks.
Okay.
And it can kind of go into a downward cycle. If I already feel guilty and like I'm failing, and then my brain literally struggles to focus on a task and I can't complete it, then I feel, look, that feeling of failure is now validated, and I feel more guilty. It's
like a domino,
and it can go far and lead to one of those emergency visits we were talking about. But the clinical criteria, I know for me, it's really interesting, because it doesn't, like when I'm interviewing somebody or assessing somebody, if they have depression or a certain level of depression, a kid and even adult isn't going to say, I'm feeling down, depressed, or hopeless.
Yeah. Right.
It represents itself different in the expressions, the language, and the gestures of that person.
Right.
It's really unique to them. Like, So I think for parents, one of the very important things for parents is to know your child,
Yeah. Yeah.
to know them well,
Mm.
to be curious about them. And so when something in their mood shifts, you will pick up on it.
Right.
And you'll know it. Be engaged with your children.
Right.
So when you notice that their sleep patterns are not what they used to be, something's off. Be curious.
Mm.
When you notice that their eating patterns are different, there's a shift, there's a change. It's different than what it used to be. It either happens suddenly or maybe gradually. There's something there. Be curious.
Mm.
If our children are isolating more, interacting less, more sedentary, spending more time in their room,
Right.
expressions, maybe my belly hurts, or I miss people, or it can be represented in a lot of different potential ways for your child.
Yeah. 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 And so I think that it's important that we as parents, or even loving our friends, right, is that we recognize those things and not being afraid to have the conversation. I think sometimes we're so afraid of offending people that we hold back our care,
Yeah.
And which leads me to asking more practical. Now we're getting to more of the
Sure.
practical side of things. What are some tools that we can use as parents, as friends, as loved ones to help through this process? Let's say we see somebody, we know that they have a sense of anxiety or depression, and we want to help them. We desperately want to help them.
Yeah.
What can we do?
What can we do when we realize something's off and
Yeah.
we maybe at that point don't know exactly what to do?
Right, exactly. Okay. We don't know what to do. What do we do? Without making it worse, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So prevention is always best, and I think connection is the best prevention. So if we're going to be preventative, we're going to be connected and engaged as a family.
Okay.
So what does that look like? That looks like creating routines where we are together, working together, accomplishing things together on a daily basis, accomplishing like practical tasks around the house, like doing dishes together. That can be an amazing time for bonding. It can be an amazing time to fight, but it actually is an incredible time to bond, to
Yeah.
do something like that together, and just to accomplish that together, or to organize something, or whatever daily task there is to do. In addition to that, setting aside time for engagement time with games or watching movies together, setting aside electronic free time where we're engaged in human interaction.
Yeah, so for a family that never, the routine before was you've got your friends, I've got my work, and
Right.
we just kind of pass back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're all stuck in the same home together.
Yep.
And if we're together, we're fighting. What is a step? Like, what is just, we talk about next steps here at C3 a lot.
Yeah.
And so what would be the next step of a mom or a dad to take in order to engage that, to start that?
So I guess we're kind of talking about prevention. Now it's like, all right, There's something here. What do we do?
Right.
We could start in 100 different places. Where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I think about the parents, and I'm always like, they've got to kind of be on the same page.
Yeah.
And so how often in your in the clinical side are you first tackling that aspect for a whole family, that's struggling, and maybe there's one child that's bringing up a whole lot of other things that are happening inside the family, right? But do you ever tackle that situation first? Just getting mom and dad on the same page?
Sure. Yeah. My specialty is family therapy. I love working with family units. So absolutely. Do I address that first? Absolutely. because family systems can create and maintain mental health diagnoses.
Yeah.
The symptoms of mental health can literally be created and maintained within the family system.
Yeah.
A child that's engaged is going to fare a lot different than a child who's disengaged. A child who has had experience where they can talk to their parents about how they feel and be validated, and their parents will help them work through it, will be very different than the child who is isolated and disengaged from their family. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, I think so. But what do you think about if mom and dad start engaging differently? Like if they start actually showing love to one another, talking in a respectful manner, does that help? Do you think pass on to the mood of the children?
Inevitably, for better or for worse, the way parents interact passes on to the children.
Right.
So conflict itself doesn't leave a child distraught unless it's perpetually unresolved. So when children see and experience a pattern of mom and dad were fighting, or mom and dad had conflict, but they didn't do some of the really dangerous things like call each other names or criticize each other and put each other down or bring in the kids to the argument, but mom and dad had a conflict and they repaired. Mom and dad had a conflict and they repaired. Mom and dad always repair their conflict. Now, when mom and dad are having conflict, my pattern and what I know in my experience then is they're going to repair, so everything's going to be okay. So yes, a child's experience and what they observe in their parents is very, very important.
Yeah.
And so, so parents reflecting and evaluating their family system, this is maybe an opportunity for them to change those patterns and to make sure that their children can feel secure in what they observe.
Now, I've met with you a couple times on a clinical side, right? Like we've kind of shot back and forth, and you've always had these rocks, and I remember the first time we were sitting there, and you're like, "Hey, you can pick up a rock if you want," and I'm like, "Why would I pick up a rock?" But tell me a little bit about this.
So, I know it seems a little bit strange, right? Like, why hang on to a rock?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the neat story behind this is that, I have a friend who actually collects these on the Washington coast, and then he takes them and he tumbles them in one of those tumblers for like 4 weeks, and different grains of grit, and it polishes them and makes them shiny and smooth, right?
Huh.
And
so at one time they were rough.
Yeah.
Right?
So it might seem like, it seems like, why rocks? But you would be amazed to how people connect with these. And so, I have mine right here, right?
Yeah. And
so I guess it gives you something to kind of hang on to if you're anxious or nervous. Any type of repetitive movement is calming. That's why if you think about naturally, like we'll twiddle our thumbs or wiggle our foot, especially if we're anxious, because repetitive movement helps us calm. Something tactile, and then something with a neat association to it, right?
Yeah.
Like somebody got these for you. Someone traveled to the coast to get these for you.
That's kind of cool.
And someone it really cares, and they give me these rocks, and I have handed them out, and you wouldn't believe, like, especially when I work with kids, but even a lot of adults, they come in and they'll be like, I need a rock for my friend. Oh my gosh, cool. It really helps me. It helps me feel better when I'm anxious, when I'm talking in front of the class, or when I'm in school or wherever. It helps, it just helps me calm to have that to hang on to, or even, to look at the details of it. It helps me take my mind off of things. And so I've even traveled the world. I brought them to Kenya, Jamaica, and you wouldn't believe the joy behind a kid with no toys getting a rock from America.
You said something really interesting that that this one rock tells me that somebody cares.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of students, at least because I get lots of phone calls from parents that are kind of desperate with kids that they just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And they say things like, my son or daughter just don't believe that anybody cares.
Yeah.
And I'm always just like, there are so many people that do care, and how do we communicate that to our people we care about, that there's more than just one person
Yeah.
that cares, and I think about this rock,
Yeah.
right? I think, well, this is somebody that cares
Yeah.
enough to make these rocks for a great purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we can find that in a lot of different areas.
So how do we help? Well, I thought, as you were saying that, I thought
Yeah.
of something because, when a child, let's say they come up and they say, I feel like nobody cares.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes our instant response, and not necessarily bad to say, of course people care for you.
Right.
But what that can do
Yeah.
is it can invalidate how that child actually feels.
Oh.
You're telling them,
I've done that a ton of times.
right?
Of course somebody cares.
Of course somebody cares,
Yeah.
but unintentionally they could get that message
Right.
of, okay, so what I feel is wrong or even crazy, or oh, something really is wrong with me that I feel this way, right? And so a lot of times I work with parents, and I found that there is something truly powerful about feeling understood.
Mm.
I don't think a price tag can be put on it. And if you and I ever reflected on like times in our life when we were stressed and someone told us, you don't have to don't feel that way, or we got that message, guess
Right.
what happens to our stress? It goes up.
Yeah.
But then what happens when somebody has empathy for us and goes, you're stressed,
Interesting.
or you feel like people don't care?
Yeah.
That's a really tough feeling. I am so sorry you feel that way, but I am so glad that you felt safe enough to tell me that.
That is so hard, Ryan. 'Cause I mean, for me, I am naturally, I want to fix things, right?
Right.
Like, I want to fix what I feel is broken, right?
Yeah.
I want to make you feel better. So how am I going to do
Right.
that? And I even have to pause with my own family, and I have to say, okay, are you wanting me just to listen right now?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want me to give you tools, right? Do you want me to tell you how to fix this?
Yeah.
Because I catch myself all the time just wanting to share.
Yep.
You know?
Tell you how to fix it.
Yeah, tell you how to fix it. Because I got all the answers, right?
Right. Your heart's in the right
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
Your heart's in
Yeah.
the right place. There's no negative intent. But I kind of have this thing that I try to remember, which is like often empathy doesn't have the answers. Often empathy is the answer.
Mm.
And I can be surrounded by people but feel isolated in this emotion that I feel. And when I know that you get it,
Right,
when I know that you understand, then all of a sudden I'm not alone.
right.
And empathy then connects us.
Mm.
You get it. You're with me. I'm not alone, and I'm not isolated in how I feel. And if we can't think of something practical to do, and I'd say even more important than finding that practical thing to do, let me make it better or tell you how to make it better, it's so powerful, the human connection of empathy and knowing that we're not alone in what we feel.
That is so good. That is so good. Yeah, because I think connecting with somebody is what they need. You know,
Yeah.
they need to feel like we're on the same team and I'm here,
Yes.
you know?
And empathy connects us.
Yeah.
And at the very least, when we're then connected, when I don't feel alone and my guard comes down because you get it, my guard naturally just comes down, and now I'm opened. And then at that point, I might ask you, what can I do, or what would you do? And I'm more open to receive the fix.
So Ryan, as we wrap things up, I know there's a couple other tools that you've shared with me, and what are some things that parents can engage their kids with that you've used in the past?
Yeah. So if I there's like so many things that I would love to
Sure.
communicate to parents.
This is a much longer conversation, I'm sure. Yeah.
Enthusiastically.
Yeah.
But I guess going maybe more on the anxiety side, to teach our kids how to cope with anxiety.
Okay.
Help them understand what it is and give them some tools on what to do with it. For example, teaching them what anxiety is. Well, anxiety is actually normal. Anxiety is our brain's warning signal that there's danger or potential danger, right? That's why our brain, when we go through an adjustment or something changes, naturally anxiety goes up, and it makes us more ready to cope with the unpredictable change, right?
Like getting on a crazy roller coaster anxiety, like getting anxious about that, or what?
Well, it's like, think about it. Like if it's quiet at night and you hear a sudden noise, anxiety is alerted.
Yeah.
Anxiety alerts, your heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, and it essentially prepares you to be ready for whatever caused that inconsistent sound.
Yeah.
It could be a threat, right? But if it isn't, then we calm.
Okay.
But also big adjustments like moving or changing schools or no longer being at school, not being able to see people. It's normal to feel a certain level of anxiety. So anxiety is the brain's normal response to change, threat, or perceived threat. So teaching them what it feels like in their body, your heart might go. You might feel sick in your belly. You might feel some, you might feel tingly in your arms, or you might feel worried. So anxiety is normal. Help them understand that. Help them understand that it can help them when they learn how to use it. So how do we make anxiety go away out of the 100 different things you can do? One of the things that I love to teach kids is, when they're anxious, quite often they'll ask this question, like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this? And they come to us and they go, what if?
Yeah, had that, yeah.
And we answer it, but it almost seems to rarely, if ever, resolve
the anxiety.
What they feel.
Yeah.
Rarely, if ever. So what helps reduce anxiety is giving our brain a backup plan.
Okay.
So teaching our kids, instead of asking what if, well, if this happens, then I will. It's empowering and helps kids feel like, okay, if this happens, then I will.
Have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
If this happens, I'll take my deep breath.
Okay.
If this happens, I'll get my calming stone.
Yeah.
If this happens, I can talk to my parents. If this happens, there's something I can do, even if it's shifting my thinking. So maybe, common anxiety trigger is feeling helpless. This gives my brain a backup plan. It gives me a sense of empowerment, and that helps me relax.
Nice. Great.
Yeah.
Great. I love it. And we got another one.
Yeah. So one of the other things I encourage parents to do is have mental health check-ins with your kid.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing? Talking just in person is fine, but especially with little kids, it can help them to even self-evaluate and know themselves. So, like one of the resources I have right here, it's called an emotion thermometer. And so you sit with your kid and you have them identify their emotion. When they identify it, it helps them realize where they are, and then you can talk to them about why they feel the way they feel and what they can do with it. And it can open up a lot of really good conversations, So it's like, not happy or happy, not sad, very sad, not angry, very angry, and evaluating self to where am I down here? Am I way up here?
I relate to the worn out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you at when you're worn out? Yeah. Or annoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, probably today, this morning I felt like right here worn out, but this afternoon I feel about right here,
Yeah. Nice.
But I'm going on vacation in a day, so.
Oh, cool. We all need a good vacation.
Perfect time. But yeah, I mean, there's some practical tools. A lot of them are readily available online where parents can have a mental health check-in. How are you doing? I guess one of the things I would encourage parents to do is to have regular check-ins to make it normal, because especially if it's not something that the child's used to, it's actually pretty easy for a child to say, I'm fine. And the parent goes, fine, great, good.
Yeah.
We're good with this. So know your child, be engaged with them, talk with them, know when their patterns change, and make it a habit to have regular check-ins with how they're doing and working through this major adjustment that the whole world is dealing with.
Yeah.